Good morning, everybody. Thanks for checking in. Hey, today we're talking about something pretty fun. It's called the Enneagram. Now, really the general idea we're talking about is self-awareness. Maybe you've heard the phrase, what you don't know won't hurt you, or no news is good news, or ignorance is bliss. And the reality is those can be true, except for when it comes to self-awareness, because what you don't know can actually hurt you when it comes to yourself and your relationships. And I think, I've no data on this, so I'm totally making this up. I don't know where it is, but I think somewhere around middle school, maybe high school, for some, maybe college, and some of you're good at this, but somewhere in there, we kind of stop learning about ourselves. You know, when you're a kid, you're always kind of exploring yourself. You're willing to try new things, and you kind of feel your feelings a little bit more. Somewhere into adulthood, we kind of stop that. And we just kind of decide we are who we are, and then we just turn our brain off when it comes to learning about ourselves. And that's really, really unhealthy. And I say that because I did that. And it kind of just led to this flat line kind of deal. So we're talking about the importance of self-awareness, because it is so important. We're not going to spend a lot of time on that, other than you got to do something to help you be more aware about yourself. And I want to talk about this thing called the Enneagram. Now, some of you hear the word Enneagram and a few things come to mind. One, you're like, well, what is this weird thing, the Enneagram? And maybe you've seen the little symbol and you're like, that looks like some kind of satanic symbol. It's not, okay? The other thing that comes to mind maybe is not another personality assessment. Like, how many of these things do we need? You know, there's the disc profile, and there's this one with the animals, and there's this color one, and there's, you know, you're just like, I'm just done with them. I totally understand that. I love the Enneagram, but here's all I want to say is it doesn't have to be the Enneagram. It's got to be something. You got to do something to help you learn about yourself. Listen, if that's sitting down with your mom and go, Mom, what were my tendencies when I was a kid? Why do you think I do this? You know, because Mom knows you. Or sitting down with a spouse or with a best friend, or maybe it's reading some book, or maybe it's some other assessment. You're really into the disc profile. Great. You got to do something. Another one I really like is Strength Finders. Kind of list your strengths in order. And maybe you want to do like a culmination of all of these things, and that's fine too. But just for today, I want to talk about the Enneagram. And what it is it's a system of 9 personality types. So there's numbers 1 through 9, and you got to say this up front: you are not identified necessarily by your number. And we're gonna talk about the different types. And as soon as I say a type, you might go, "Yeah, that's me." But it's easy to put yourself kind of into a little bit of a pigeonhole when it comes to this. And what it does is just a tool for understanding ourselves. Now, this kind of came into public. This is like the origin of this is like super long time ago. I know it sounds like an official date, but it really kind of started coming into the public in about 1915 in Moscow, of all places. And I don't want to like get into the history of all, but just know like it's been around a while. And essentially it focuses on 3 areas: personal and spiritual growth, successful relationships at home and at work, which is really valuable. And then it's really helpful for like leadership development, team building. It helps you to know the people that you're around or the people that you're leading, which is really vital. Not only do you got to know yourself as a leader, but you got to know the people that you're leading, because if not, you're just going to run over everybody. And you're going to be trying to communicate with this type out of your type, and that type doesn't really respond to your type. And so you got to figure out a way to say things a little bit differently so it makes sense to somebody else through their filter. And so the 9 types, we're just going to go over them really quick, and then maybe we'll kind of start to dig into some of them. This might just be an overview, and then maybe I'll do maybe 3 more videos in the next few weeks, kind of talking about the the 9 types specifically. The type 1 is the reformer. All right, they're the rational, idealistic type. They're really principled, purposed. They're self-controlled. You could kind of sum their life up in like they're the perfectionist. Everything's got to be just right. They're all about justice. I think my 10-year-old is a 1. Now I know she's 10 and it might kind of change, but I see some of those tendencies. She's very justice oriented. Like, you tell me I can't do this. Why can't I do this? I need to know that this makes sense. Type 2 is the helper. They're caring, interpersonal. They're demonstrative. They're generous. They're people pleasing. They're possessive. I'm pretty sure my second oldest daughter is a 2. The helper always wants to help, and they want to fix everybody else's problems, and they want to please people. And as I say this, you might know one of these people, right? They always seem to be there with a cup of soup when you're sick, or they always seem to be kind of picking up some slack at work if you drop the ball, and they're just happy to help out. The 3 is the achiever. Success-oriented, pragmatic, expressive, dramatic, self-absorbed, temperamental. I am a strong type 3. It's kind of been my wiring since I was a kid. And just to camp it on here, because it's kind of the one I'm the most familiar with for a second. When I took the Enneagram and I read, and I'll put it in the link, in the show note links. There's a couple tests you can take. There's one, the official Enneagram Institute. I think it's like $12, something like that. But they give you like a stack of information about your type and where you go in health and where you go when you're not healthy, and the different wings, and we'll talk about that. But when I read that, I handed it to my wife and I said, you need to read this, because this is how I feel, and this is how I've tried to explain and done a poor job. This is why I am the way I am. Because when I read it, it felt like someone had been following me around since I was like a 5-year-old kid. Always trying to be successful, and not even necessarily be successful, but appear successful, because I thought that makes people happier. And I'll tell you this, self-awareness, self-knowledge, while it sounds like, it's going to be this really good, powerful thing, it is, but it can be very difficult. It can be very painful, because you learn things about yourself and you're like, oh man, that hurts. I didn't know that about myself. I didn't know I could tend to be a little bit self-absorbed. I didn't know I could be so image conscious. So the 3 is the achiever. They're always like kind of out in front, and they're always running hard, and they're always pushing. You may know a type 3, you may be a type 3. And the fact that I spent more time on type 3 would probably prove I'm a type 3. All right. The 4 is the individualist. They're kind of the sensitive, withdrawn type. Expressive, dramatic, self-absorbed, temperamental. There's a guy named Ian Cron who does a lot of stuff with Enneagram. He has a book he wrote called The Road Back to You, which I would strongly suggest. And he actually has a free Enneagram assessment. And so if you go to theroadbacktoyou.com, you can do that assessment for free today and kind of start down this road of self-discovery. But he says that they found that there are less type 4s in the world than any other type. They're very artistic. They're very creative. Can tend to keep to themselves, be a little bit more withdrawn. They're more introspective. They've probably been doing the self-knowledge thing since they were little kids and didn't quit, because they're always kind of in their head. They're always thinking. The 5 is the investigator. They're kind of intense. They're the cerebral type, right? They're always thinking about things. They're perceptive. They're a little secretive, sometimes isolated. They always have to know the why behind everything, from this computer works. Well, I want to know why it works. And so they'll do research to figure out why something works or why something is the way it is. And before they buy a product, they research because they want to investigate everything about it. They need to know everything. Number 6 is the loyalist. They're committed, security-oriented, engaging, responsible. They can be anxious or suspicious. But this person is pretty loyal through thick and thin. And one of their driving things is fear. They kind of operate out of a fear-based system. I want to say, and I could be wrong on this, but they also, while 4s, there's less of them in American culture. 6s, I think there's the most of them in American culture. The enthusiast is number 7. The enthusiast when you see the enthusiast, right? They're busy and they're fun-loving and they're life of the party and they're spontaneous and they're versatile and easily distracted, maybe a little bit scattered. A lot of us, we look at the 7 and we go, I wish I could be a little bit more like that, right? I wish I could get outside of my box. I wish I could just, show up to the party and just start talking to people and act like I know everybody and I've been there. And we kind of look at that a little bit with jealous eyes sometimes because they just seem to have so much fun. And sometimes I look at a 7, I'm like, why can't I have fun like that? Nothing seems to get them down. They don't seem to be in their own head. They just seem to be in the moment and present. 7s can be, they can be really innovative. They can be real helpful in an organization because they're just like, yeah, let's go, and they're just moving and shaking. 8 is the challenger. And again, a challenger when you see a challenger. They're powerful, they're dominating, self-confident, they're decisive, they're willful, a lot of bit confrontational. They're the ones, if they have a problem, they're going to tell you in detail their problem. They're not going to hold anything back. They believe in getting to the point. They believe in honesty wins. And they're just going to tell you. You ask an 8, does this shirt make me look fat? Yeah, it does a little bit. You should probably change, right? That's an 8. Maybe you're married to an 8 and you're going like, this explains everything. I thought she was being a total jerk. They can be, right? But that's just how they communicate. And with 8 specifically, it's the best way to communicate back to them. They appreciate the directness. They appreciate being to the point. They don't want to beat around any bush because they just think that's a waste of time. 8s are a lot of times these really powerful leaders, and they just lead well because they take charge. And again, when we get into talking about these specifically, I can even give you some examples of an 8 or what the good side, what the bad side is of an 8. And then the last one is 9. They're the peacemaker. The peacemaker is easygoing, self-effacing, receptive, reassuring, agreeable, can be complacent, right? Sometimes people have given an animal type to these. The 9's animal, the spirit animal. The 9 is the sloth, which is funny. My wife is a 9, and 9s and 3s, it can be weird because 3s are kind of take charge and let's drive, and 9s are kind of like, okay, let's go, and until they're not, and so 9s they're the easygoing, yeah, what you want to do, let's do it, and I'm okay with that, I want to keep the peace. And 9s can get taken advantage of, which I have done in my marriage before. I've taken advantage of my wife's easygoingness and didn't really consider what she thought about a matter or what she wanted to do. It's just like, well, here's what I want to do. And she's like, oh, okay. And so maybe a 9 in your life, or maybe you are a 9 in your life. So those are the 9 types. And again, I don't want to spend a lot more time today other than you have to do something that helps you be aware of yourself. So you're always learning about yourself, because even over time too, while these are kind of ingrained in you since maybe you're a kid, they've been developed since then, you also have some things in you that kind of change over time, and maybe you move from health to unhealth, or maybe you move from unhealth to health. We always have to be doing something that helps us to be aware of ourselves, because if we are not willing to do that difficult work, we will keep burning bridges in our relationships. We'll keep hurting the people we love. We'll keep sabotaging ourselves, whether it's in our personal life or our work life. And we kind of look up and we go, why does this keep happening? Oh, well, and then we move on. At some point, we can't go, oh, well, and we can't move on. And we need to sit in that mess for a little bit and go, why is this happening? what is it in me that this continues to happen? Because if it continues to happen, we can blame everybody else around us. But what's the common denominator? Me, you. One thing we always say is, wherever you are, there you are. And if you've got a mess, it's going to be there with you. And if we haven't addressed the mess, it's going to keep being there. So check out the Enneagram. Again, in the show description below, I'll put some links to these different Enneagram types, maybe the book itself, The Road Back to You by Ian Crom. He also has a podcast that's really good. He interviews different types and kind of explores, and it's just really helpful, really insightful. So hope this was helpful. As you take the test, here's what I want you to do. In the comments below the video, I'm going to ask you to go ahead and put your type. Did you know that was your type before you even took the test? Were you surprised by that? Maybe read through them all and kind of guess, like, I'm pretty sure, I think I'm a this. And then take the test. And so comment below what you are, what your type is, how that's affected you, and look forward to seeing those comments. All right. We'll see you later this week, maybe next week. We'll explore maybe like types 1, 2, 3, something like that. So, all right, have a good week.